My name is Jenna, and I've been married for 3 years now at the age of 30. My husband, Seth, who's 32, works at his family business. His family owns a wholesale liquor company where his father is the president and Seth serves as the director. Ever since we got married, I've been working there as well as an office clerk. My mother-in-law has never involved herself with the family business, having been a stay-at-home mom for the longest time. And when I say stay at home, she used to employ a housekeeper, so she never really had to lift a finger. When I married into the family and started living with my in-laws, they let the housekeeper go. Why would we need a housekeeper when we've got a daughter-in-law? My mother-in-law remarked, and both my father-in-law and husband seemed to agree with her. It seems my father-in-law, who has taken into his wife's family, has never been able to stand up to his wife. Growing up, Seth saw his father always obeying his mother's commands. It's as if he believes that obeying every word is the natural order of things. Even when we visited for the first time before we got married, it was evident that she was the one who ruled the house. Since becoming a part of this family, I've been burdened with both housework and office work. The alcohol wholesale business has been in a tight spot lately, and we can't afford to hire more staff, so I've been lending a hand. They had to let the housekeeper go because the money to pay her was running out. Nevertheless, this company, which has been around since my husband's grandfather's time, manages to keep going thanks to long-standing business relationships. The grandfather founded the company in his lifetime and expanded it to its current scale. There are about 10 employees who handle sales and deliveries, even delivering quite far away. The grandfather, having no son of his own, had my father-in-law, who was a promising employee, take over the business. He arranged for my father-in-law to marry his only daughter and entrusted the company to them. I never met this grandfather myself, but apparently he was a stern man. Dad is a patient man, Seth often says, praising his father. He never got angry, no matter what was said to him. Grandpa was pretty stern, but Mom is even more so. Seth, who accepts whatever his mom tells him, talks about it as if it's someone else's business. Until we got married and started living together, I couldn't have imagined this side of Seth. While we were dating, he seemed like a bit of a wild one, but at home, he becomes almost invisible. He's also lively and energetic at work, but turns quiet as soon as he gets home. The same is true for my father-in-law, who's bustling at the company, but becomes as quiet as a church mouse at home. I was shocked at first by their transformation, but now I find myself in the same boat. In this house, my mother-in-law is the absolute authority, and no one dares to defy her. When we first started living together, she made a huge fuss because she didn't like the food I made. The dinner I made casually was apparently too spicy for her, and she tossed it into the trash after just one bite. In a panic, I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, was it too spicy?" My mother-in-law made me stand before her and began her lecture. "Are you trying to make me sick by making me eat something this spicy?" I was petrified by the sight of my mother-in-law's face, which looked like a demon. Seth and my father-in-law stopped eating their meals and sat rigidly, their eyes cast downwards. When I cast a fleeting glance at them for help, I saw Seth's face, even paler than mine. When I looked at my father-in-law, he too had a pale face, just like Seth. From their expressions, I could imagine how terrifying my mother-in-law's lectures were. After enduring more than 30 minutes of my mother-in-law's sermon, I had forgotten why she was angry in the first place. Even my angry mother-in-law seemed to have gotten hungry and ended up eating the meals I made. Seth and my father-in-law have always lived with my mother-in-law, so they've learned to live quietly at home. That's when I started to regret marrying into such a formidable family. When my mother-in-law was a young adult, her father's company was at its peak. An employee who had just been working for the company for a long time spoke nostalgically about it when he was retiring. Apparently, they had more than double the number of employees they have now, and their sales were incomparably higher. My mother-in-law had experienced this prosperous era and finds it hard to lower her standard of living. That's probably why she used to hire a housekeeper and never did any household chores herself. My mother-in-law loves shopping and often goes out, bringing back loads of things. I don't know how much money she spends, but given the company's current performance, it's starting to worry me. Seth and my father-in-law don't say anything about her shopping, so I keep my mouth shut too. If I made an ill-considered comment, I might get a lecture that lasts longer than 30 minutes. Before I knew it, I had started to think like Seth and my father-in-law. For about a year after our marriage, I was fully occupied trying to get used to the lifestyle in my husband's family and the work at the company. By the time 2 years had passed, I was facing a bigger problem. We were unable to have a child. Particularly, in my mother-in-law's mind, was her experience of not having a son in her father's generation and having to take in a son-in-law. She worries that the same thing should not happen in Seth's generation. As we approached our 3rd year of marriage, she started to make sarcastic comments every chance she got. "When are you going to give us an heir? You didn't marry into this family to be an office clerk." Even the sight of a baby on TV would set her off. "There are so many babies in the world. Why don't we have one here?" She'd glare at me. Seth and my father-in-law would disappear whenever this topic started. Hearing this day after day, I began to feel there was no place for me in this family. I wished Seth would help. But no matter how many times I confided in him, he'd say, "Don't worry about it, just let it go." As if he didn't want to be involved. At the same time, the company's situation was deteriorating. My father-in-law's company, with its old-fashioned business style, was unable to get work from trendy eateries and the like. My mother-in-law seemed to sense this, even though Seth and my father-in-law didn't talk about it with her. Still, she couldn't stop her favorite activity, shopping, and brought home all sorts of things. Whether she was angry at herself, I don't know, but she'd come home from shopping in a bad mood. Then her anger would be directed at me. "It's Jenna's fault for not producing an heir. That's why I end up buying unnecessary things." My mother-in-law, who blamed me for incomprehensible reasons, seemed to pin all the blame on me. Perhaps because of her daily grumbles, my health started to fail. I asked Seth and my father-in-law to let me take a break from work and got tested at the hospital. Seth seemed hopeful that I might be pregnant, but it was due to stress. It would be best to rest a little in a relaxing environment, but there was no relaxing environment for me at present, nor could I afford to rest. Knowing it was impossible, I explained the situation to Seth and my in-laws when I got home. The doctor said it would be better if I could rest a little, but it's okay. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law said, "You should go back to your parents' house and rest for a while." She even told my father-in-law, "We can manage, right? It seems like we're not so busy right now." It seemed like she was urging them to let me take a break from work. My father-in-law, surprised by my mother-in-law's words, replied, "We can cover for you. It's okay," with a relieved look on his face. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's unexpected words. At this time, I thought she might actually be a kind person. But that was a big mistake. She was just a person with a bad temper after all. The next day, I went back to my parents' house right away to rest. When I told them on the phone that I was coming back, they seemed very worried. When my mother saw me in person, she said, "You look pale and thin. Haven't you lost weight?" she asked with a voice on the verge of tears. "First, take some rest and recover." My father also welcomed me. He seemed to understand everything from my expression. He must have understood that things weren't going well with my in-laws, because stress was the cause. I felt bad for worrying my parents by coming back home. My health improved quickly after I returned to my parents' house. Clearly, the environment of my in-laws' house was the cause of stress. About a week after I arrived at my parents' house, my in-laws suddenly showed up. I could understand if my husband Seth showed up, but I never thought my in-laws would come to my parents' house. My mother-in-law suddenly started yelling as soon as she arrived. "We're returning this good-for-nothing daughter-in-law who can't even bear an heir. It's up to the parents to take responsibility." Even my mother, who met her at the door, was too surprised to respond. My father rushed to the entrance and challenged her. "I can't let it go if you call my daughter a failure. What do you mean?" My mother-in-law fought back when my father immediately rebutted her. 3 years into marriage and still no baby. What's more, she's weak and can't work." My mother, finally regaining her composure, counterattacked. "Isn't Seth also responsible for not having a child?" My mother-in-law dismissed her with a snort, making baseless excuses. "There's nothing wrong with Seth. The problem lies with your daughter." My father, maintaining his composure against my mother-in-law's unreasonable remarks, said, "If you insist on that, we'll take our daughter back. Are you fine with Jenna leaving?" I, who didn't want to face my mother-in-law, was watching the situation from a place where they couldn't see me. My father glanced at me for confirmation. The image of Seth flashed in my mind, but I nodded. Seth hasn't visited me once since I came back home, and he can't stand up against his mother's remarks. There's a limit to calling someone a failure or trying to return them like some defective product. From now on, we'll have no relation with you. Please remember that." My father responded very politely. My father-in-law, hiding behind my mother-in-law, seemed like he wanted to say something. However, my mother-in-law cut him off. "We'll send the failure of a daughter-in-law's luggage later. We'll hire a divorce lawyer too." With that, my in-laws, who glared at my parents, left. "Why didn't you say something more to such rude remarks?" My mother, this time, turned on my father. Calming her down, he said, "There's no use talking to that woman. Don't worry. We'll make her realize her mistake through our actions, not words." My mother, not understanding what my father meant, was still furious. I, however, understood immediately. My father-in-law also knew, which is why he tried to say something. My father runs a restaurant chain and has a business relationship with my father-in-law's company. As someone who used to work in administration, I knew this. In fact, it was my father who introduced me to Seth. He had been doing business with my father-in-law's company since the time my grandfather-in-law was the president. My father's company, which started from a single store and struggled at first, received help from my grandfather-in-law. To this day, with a significantly larger number of stores, he procures all the alcohol and beverages from my father-in-law's company. To be honest, it seems cheaper to source from elsewhere, but they continue trading out of gratitude to my grandfather-in-law. Given that my father's company also runs an affiliated pub, it's a big account for my father-in-law's company. My mother-in-law, who didn't know about this, was able to maintain her attitude towards my father. The next day, my father called my father-in-law's company and told the person in charge, "We're ending all transactions with you." The flustered person in charge immediately reported to my father-in-law and Seth. My father-in-law, who had not anticipated that all transactions would be stopped, finally lost his temper with my mother-in-law. "Because of you, we have lost a major business deal." The normally gentle father-in-law's fury and the loss of a major deal seemed to have shocked my mother-in-law. "What? It's because of me?" My father-in-law explained to my mother-in-law that I am the daughter of a major client. When Seth and I got married, this was brought up, and my father-in-law thought my mother-in-law remembered it. She, who didn't care about business, had completely forgotten and only then remembered. "Now that you mention it, I vaguely recall something about it when Seth was getting married." Finally, grasping the severity of the situation, my mother-in-law was flustered. Seth also lashed out at her. "What were you thinking? Deciding on Jenna and my divorce on your own?" I had reported to Seth about my mother-in-law demanding a divorce from me. "I don't want a divorce. Moreover, if things continue this way, our company will collapse." Given that my father's company is a large client and profitable, if the transactions stop, they wouldn't be able to manage the business. Presently, all trading partners are demanding lower prices and they're hardly making any profit. My father's company, due to the relationship between my grandfather-in-law and my father, hadn't requested any price reduction. Such a relationship of trust seemed to be the only reason why my father introduced Seth to me. That evening, my in-laws and Seth came to my parents' house, but my father did not allow them inside. At the door, my father asked, "After all the disrespect, what brings you here today?" His anger was evident, as my father-in-law apologized from the bottom of his heart and pleaded, "We are sorry for our behavior yesterday. Could we ask you to reconsider our trade relationship?" Despite his plea, my father didn't seem to lend an ear. "We were trading out of respect for the former president. But let's end it now," my father said. And my father-in-law apologized over and over again. Then, turning to Seth and my mother-in-law, he said, "You two should apologize as well." Prompted by my father-in-law, both seemed unwilling. Moreover, my mother-in-law stated, Why do we have to go this far? Let's just give up and find another trading partner. Expressing her refusal to prostrate, Seth also followed suit. There's no need for us to apologize, as Mom said. They wouldn't listen to my father-in-law. Seeing Seth's attitude, my father became even angrier. Seth, I am disappointed in you. Why didn't you defend my daughter? At my father's words, Seth couldn't respond and kept his gaze low. Because you always do whatever my mother-in-law says. I've been suffering. Without thinking, I rushed to the entrance and finally voiced my feelings towards Seth. Seth tried to speak, but watching my mother-in-law's facial expression, he couldn't say anything. Seeing him like this, I decided that divorce was the only option. Until now, I thought we might be able to mend things, but even that tiny hope vanished completely. I'll pick up my belongings later, I told Seth clearly. My mother-in-law didn't seem to like this attitude of mine and started making a fuss. Yes, that's right. Seth needs to get a divorce from you quickly and find a new bride. My mother-in-law, who had come to apologize, started to badmouth me again. This time we'll get a bride who isn't a failure and can give us a successor. With that, she loudly walked out of our house alone. Seth immediately followed her. My father-in-law, who was left behind, was urged by my father to stop apologizing. I've made my decision. I'm going to close the company and leave the house. Surprising both my father and me. Is your business situation that bad? My father asked, and my father-in-law responded with a bitter smile. I've been considering closing down the company for a few years now, due to continued losses. While I knew their situation was tough, I didn't think it was that serious. I worked hard to leave the company to my son, but it was all in vain with him behaving like this, hunching his back as he left. The next day, when I went to pick up my stuff from my in-laws' house, nobody was there. As I was moving my belongings and about to show up at the company, I found a great uproar. Creditors who heard rumors of the bankruptcy were swarming, and my father-in-law and Seth were handling them. I left without greeting anyone. A few days later, my father-in-law's company declared bankruptcy. My mother-in-law, who had a large amount of debt, filed for personal bankruptcy and ran away with Seth. It seems Seth intends to follow his mother wherever she goes. My father-in-law is looking for re-employment for the remaining employees. I wish Seth could have thought about the employees until the end like his father did. Back home for a rest. I became well again. I never thought I would get a divorce during my convalescence. Seeing me depressed after the divorce, a friend who was worried about me introduced me to a man. This man, who has firm beliefs, captivated me. After about a year of dating, we got married, and we were blessed with a baby. When I got pregnant easily, something I had been hoping for so long. I thought the problem must have been with Seth. Now, I can laugh about it. But at the same time, I was so troubled that it affected my health. Perhaps a peaceful environment was good for me. In any case, now I can't wait for the arrival of our baby.
My name is Lily Jones. I'm 62 years old. Just a regular housewife who looks forward to evening walks with my retired husband. What I'm about to tell you is about when we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary, our silver anniversary. It was quite an event, and I think you'll want to hear about it. Back then, I was working as a magazine editor, and my husband Tom was in advertising. We were both always busy, often leading lives that barely intersected. Thankfully, despite that, our marriage stayed strong, and our daughter, Sally, grew up to be a straight arrow kind of girl. Around that time, Sally had just started her career, and Tom and I were getting to an age where we were mentoring the next generation at our jobs. Things were finally settling down. We never really did typical family things like going on vacations because of our hectic schedules, but seizing this peaceful moment. "Let's spend our 25th anniversary just relaxing as a family," Tom suggested. That's when it hit me. This year was our 25th, our silver anniversary. I was thrilled at the thought alone, but Sally got even more excited. "Why not go on a trip? Let's splurge on a fancy hotel." So we all took the day off and decided to stay at a hotel. We chose a beautiful hotel known for its ocean view, pool, and fantastic seafood, as per Sally's request. It was an ultra-luxurious hotel, often featured on TV. Then came the big day. The view was just as amazing as we had heard. A stunning contrast of the ocean and greenery right before our eyes. I couldn't help it. "Wow, that's wonderful!" We all instinctively took out our phones to capture the moment. It was that breathtaking. The room we booked was one of the hotel's special ones, known for its beautiful sunset views, like a scene out of this world. It's usually reserved for celebrities and politicians, a real VIP experience. It's so popular, it's almost impossible to book. We felt lucky to have gotten it. Our excitement was sky high. "Let's hurry up and go!" Sally, more excited than us, pulled us towards the front desk. "Excuse me, we have a reservation under the name Jones?" I said to the female staff at the counter. "Yes, Mrs. Jones, please give me a moment to check," she replied, searching for information in the reservation list. "Oh, I'm sorry, but there seems to be a mistake. You're Mrs. Jones, correct?" Yes, that's right," I replied, puzzled. She looked back at the list, confused. "I'm sorry, but it seems like we don't have your reservation. We are a reservation-only hotel." "What? That can't be right. We definitely made a reservation." I was shocked, raising my voice in the quiet elegance of the luxury hotel. "Well, we do have a reservation to Mrs. Johnson today." "That must be a mistake in hearing our name. We made a reservation." I was sure of it, because I had made a call myself. And I clearly said Jones. The date was correct too. Not convinced, I even gave her our address and phone number, asking her to check again. "Please, wait a moment," she said with a brief and pleasant smile, and disappeared into the back. What's with that face? It's creepy, as I'm thinking this. What do you mean?" My daughter asks with a puzzled voice. It must be some mistake. I made a reservation properly. It's okay. I smile, and so does my husband. Right, everything will surely be fine, he says, reassuring her daughter with a smile. After all, this is a luxury hotel. They must handle any mishaps with sincerity.
Thank you for waiting. Please follow me,
said a woman who appears to be the assistant manager of the hotel, standing before us. I tease my daughter. See, I told you we had a reservation. With a playful smile.
Oh, so it was just a misunderstanding? I was worried there.
Both my husband and daughter sigh in relief.
This is your room.
We try to contain our excitement and high expectations as she opens the door. Huh? Something's...
It's different from what we saw on TV.
My daughter is the first to speak up. My husband also. Scratches his head. Indeed, it's different from the room we saw in the photos and on TV. I'm sure of it, having eagerly looked through travel magazines countless times. The interior is somewhat similar, but the furnishings seem old and dirty, even from a distance. The only view from the window is of trees and rocky terrain, blocking the light and making the room dark. There's no sea in sight, and obviously, we can't see the advertised sunset. It seems like we'd been given a room on the complete opposite side of what we reserved. Excuse me, is this really a room? I ask.
The room you reserved is exactly as booked,
was the reply. She replies a bit too firmly, making me feel uncomfortable. I didn't mean to be rude, but did I offend her somehow?
Due to the season, the view might be slightly less impressive than usual. If this room does not meet your expectations, we can offer another available room as a special case.
Her detached manner makes us exchange glances. If the view outside a hotel is that beautiful, wouldn't any room offer a stunning view? Or maybe, if this is the standard for the best rooms, the others might be the same. Her attitude is also concerning. If we're being seen as troublesome guests, perhaps we should just cancel. That thought crosses my mind. My daughter looks troubled, probably thinking the same. However, my husband says, We've come all this way, and the view from the parking lot was so beautiful. Surely a different room will offer a better view. He decides to continue our stay. There's some logic to what he says. Thinking about when we can all get together next. It's uncertain. We don't want to miss this special anniversary. After discussing it, the three of us decide to first see the room and then make a decision. The assistant manager, who overheard our conversation, says,
Then I'll arrange it right away.
Her attitude from earlier is gone, replaced by a cheerful demeanor. The staff is informed to prepare a room, and we are instructed to wait on the lobby sofas until it's ready. But no matter how long we wait, there's no sign of being led to our room. We only watch other guests check in. I then realize something unpleasant. Other guests are being escorted to sofas by staff carrying their luggage. We've had no such assistance from the start. Is there a difference in treatment? No, it must just be busy. But I'm not the only one with these doubts. Even my daughter, who initially enjoying taking photos and videos inside a hotel.
Isn't this taking too long? Are they really preparing a good room for us?
She seemed to be getting irritated. Indeed, it's been 2 hours since they said they were preparing the next room. My husband also says, This is unusually long, scratching his head. I seem to be watching him scratch his head a lot today. It's disheartening. Just then, the assistant manager finally appears.
Your room is ready,
she says without an apology for the wait, which irks me a bit. Honestly, just waiting has exhausted us, so feeling irritated is natural. But the thought of finally relaxing in our room with an ocean view and pool brings joy. leaving us with mixed feelings. We followed the assistant manager to our room. Even the hallways we passed through are beautiful. My troubled heart starts to calm, thinking, if we can enjoy from here on, it's all good. But then, we're led through a hallway with a kitchen visible, something like the hotel's backyard.
Is this okay?
My daughter asked aloud. Shh! I hush her. I feel the same, but we can't say anything without seeing the room. But can there really be a nice room in such a place? The uncertainty is too much.
This is the room?
We're told, as we're led into a small room. There's only a tiny window and a four-legged table in the room. No chance of seeing the sea. With 3 of us and only one bed. It's too cramped to sleep. Stunned, we're left by the assistant manager, who doesn't even bother to explain the room.
Please enjoy your stay,
she says with formal gestures before leaving.
Is this some kind of nap room or something?
My daughter's comment makes both my husband and I agree. Seeing the kitchen on our way, it could only be a staff break room.
Yuck! There's a tissue on the floor!
My daughter exclaims. Sure enough, a crumpled tissue lies between the bed and the wall. After waiting for 2 hours, they hadn't even cleaned the room. This is a bit much. It's too small for 3 of us to sleep. And not worth the price. Let's go complain to the front desk. My husband's words resonate with my daughter and me. It's our much-awaited wedding anniversary and our first family trip. We don't want to compromise even a little bit. It was a good thing we decided to see the room first. Considering cancellation, we head to the front desk.
Oh, what seems to be the problem?
We run into the assistant manager coming out of the kitchen as soon as we leave the room. We can't even sleep 3 people in that room. We booked a special room with a sunset view, but this is unacceptable. Are you sure there are no other rooms available? The assistant manager's face hardens at my husband's words.
What a dilemma! We offered you the best available room. We took time preparing it, and I think the price is fair, don't you? What? Are you kidding me? There was a tissue on the floor.
My daughter is the first to express her anger.
Well, what can I do?
The assistant manager sighs as if it's out of her hands.
So are you going to cancel?
And then asks. It feels like her true colors are showing. The difference in treatment we'd felt from the start and her high-handed attitude aren't just misunderstandings or because they're busy. She's looked down on us from the beginning. We don't need a luxury hotel like this. We'll cancel, please. My daughter and husband nod in agreement.
Then, since we prepared 2 rooms for you, the charge will be for both. Please settle it at the front desk.
We're dumbfounded by the assistant manager's words, now accompanied by an unfamiliar smile. You're charging for this room too? I can't help but raise my voice.
Of course! We allocated staff and resources to prepare it.
And the deputy manager, the first room reservation was over $4,000 due to a premium for a special day. Most of the other rooms I saw during booking were nearly $2,000. We only saw the room. Charging us for such a shabby nap room is absurd. This is unacceptable. Why did you even prepare in that dirty room? My usually calm husband raises his voice. The assistant manager glares at him, then turns her back and walks into the kitchen. Is she ignoring us? At that moment, she returns with a wine bottle, splashing the wine all over my husband's face. Tom!
Dad!
My daughter and I rush to him. He's shocked. I'm okay, really, but tries to reassure us.
You're perfect for a more common hotel next door. Can't even pay for your room here,
says the assistant manager, unapologetic and arrogant. My husband takes a deep breath to calm himself and tells her, I understand your point. However, I'm not satisfied, especially with this behavior. I won't pay now. Send a written request later. We'll respond accordingly. His composure is admirable. But I am sitting. I can't believe this is happening in a luxury hotel. Or rather, is this the behavior of any decent person? It's beyond a lack of common sense. Why should we pay for such treatment? Fighting back tears of frustration, I exclaim, "We won't pay for such injustice! We'll make sure this hotel pays for this!" I leave the hotel with my disappointed daughter and husband. The assistant manager and others are shouting about the unpaid bill, but I ignore them. It's unjust. Most importantly, I want to leave this place as soon as possible. After all, today is our wedding anniversary. The car ride home is silent. Our excitement turned to disappointment. "Sally, send me the photos you took today later."
Huh? Sure, but why? They're not happy memories.
Won't they just make you sad? No, they're fueling my fighting spirit. My daughter looked puzzled at my words. Hearing our conversation, "Lily gets scared when she's serious." My husband says, "It's okay. Mom has made up her mind. Just wait, you'll see the answer in time." Back at work, I immediately approach a colleague who works on a weekly magazine. "Hey, I've got some juicy info. Interested?" With online articles dominating and weekly magazine sales dwindling, my colleague eagerly accepted my proposal. Ideally, I'd like to write the article myself, but my beat is a lifestyle magazine for housewives. It's a different field, so I let my colleague handle it. A month later, the information I provided turned into an article, and the weekly magazine hit the stands. Actually, since that hotel incident, I've been receiving frequent calls asking for payment for the room.
"There are young people we can use to force the payment. Is that what you want?"
Threatening messages like this were left on my voicemail, but I ignored them. Now I'm grateful for those events. They provided ample material for the article to take down the hotel and for consultations with consumer protection agencies. Famous luxury hotel frequented by celebrities. The dark side of its management exposed. That was the headline of the long article in the weekly magazine. Our investigation revealed that several other victims had suffered similar experiences. Thankfully, we were the only ones to endure the wine-throwing incident. Of course, the hotel hadn't always been this way. Up until that point, it had been a great hotel that lived up to its reputation. It used to be a reputable, genuinely wonderful place until about a year ago when the founder died. After the founder's death, his inexperienced young son became the wealthy young owner and manager, and his wife became the assistant manager. They had no real training in their roles. The founder's wife, mother-in-law, tried to educate them, but the son's wife wouldn't listen. Eventually, she even harassed the staff who were fond of mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, already elderly and struggling with health issues, was heartbroken at her inability to properly train her daughter-in-law. She hardly showed up for work anymore, leaving the hotel operations to her daughter-in-law, the assistant manager. This marked the worst management transition, with the new manager and his wife taking control. Since the change in management, the hotel lost its previous thoughtfulness and hospitality, leading to a slew of complaints and plummet in online and magazine ratings. Initially, the complaints were about things that could be fixed with awareness, like lack of elegance or rude interruptions. But the clueless couple ignored customer and employee feedback, and the business gradually deteriorated. Being a hotel that primarily catered to a small number of VIP guests, there weren't many who openly expressed dissatisfaction. This probably suited the couple, but it was disastrous for the hotel. Their ignorance of the basics of business was astounding. In a desperate move to save the faltering business, they resorted to room swapping. They made VIP-only rooms available to a few regular customers each month. Of course, these bookings were always swapped for other rooms, with VIPs still staying in the original rooms. They collected the regular room rates from the VIPs and also charged the regular customers for both the original room and the preparation of the nap room, a shocking strategy. It's disgraceful that such a renowned luxury hotel resorted to this. But perhaps such a distasteful method was all that the ignorant second-generation owner and his wife could come up with. Victims who suffered this mistreatment tried raising complaints on review sites and consulted consumer protection agencies, but they were largely ignored due to lack of evidence and information. Most were too shocked by the unexpected situation to capture conclusive evidence, ending up with incomplete videos or none at all. In our case, we were fortunate to have my daughter, who instinctively captures photos on her mobile phone, documenting various inconvenient truths from multiple angles. Even the assistant manager's threatening voicemail messages turned out to be valuable circumstantial evidence. Their attempt to extort money ended up leaving evidence against them. Such shallowness. And now this week's magazine article. My colleague's investigative reporting, based on photos and information I provided, caused a significant stir in various circles. It was no longer possible to ignore it as lacking evidence or insufficient information. Armed with the article's details, investigation results, and voicemail data, I approached the Consumer Protection Agency. I had been waiting for this moment. Within a week of the magazine's release, government agencies started to take action. Celebrities who had used the hotel commented, "Their treatment of guests were terrible, and I'll never use them again." This further tarnished the hotel's reputation. Other magazines, newspapers, and TV channels pick up the story, exposing the assistant manager's selfishness in her student days and the wealthy young manager's extravagant affairs. The Consumer Protection Agency committed to a serious response, and investigation agencies began their inquiries. It was becoming a spectacle. Shortly after the magazine's release, I received the unexpected call from the hotel. I prepared to record the call before answering. "Yes, this is Jones." Then,
How dare you publish such photos and lies in a magazine?
came a furious shout. As expected, it was the assistant manager. The used tissues scattered around the room, my husband drenched in wine. The magazine had published various photos, so they figured out we were the source of the information. But she didn't seem to realize I was involved with the magazine. "Just as it is," I replied calmly, which seemed to infuriate her father.
We only asked for the legitimate payment. You know about a full refund for same-day cancellations.
But the room clearly didn't match the photos.
It was an equivalent room. Stop making baseless accusations.
The assistant manager's childish, no, worse than a child, response made me sigh. What about the testimony and photos from the person who stayed in a special room who were supposed to be in that day? This was information unearthed by my colleague, who found and spoke directly to that person. The assistant manager ran out of words.
Huh? Whatever. What does that matter?
She carelessly affirmed the fact, unwittingly providing more evidence. The true nature comes out. She was giving us information. I was starting to have a little fun. "So you're saying such things aren't surprising, right?"
Whatever. Just do something about the magazine. You haven't even paid for your room, so don't cause any more trouble.
Understood. I'll take care of it. Look forward to it. I might have sounded the kindest I ever have. Was my face radiant with happiness? When asked to take care of it, I had no choice but to comply. I immediately went to my colleague. "Got some fresh info." The editorial team was already planning a second installment, and my new information made the following week's article even more sensational. Scandal breaks. Obtained audio of threatening assistant manager. This article included a phone conversation as an audio data reference. It also featured comparison images of the room we were shown and the actual nap room. I passed the audio to a colleague in TV, and it was prominently featured in a news program. Naturally, they ruined our special wedding anniversary. After the second article was released, I contacted the hotel. After a few rings,
Hotel? How can I help you?
the assistant manager's voice trembled. They had just undergone an inspection by the Consumer Protection Agency a few days ago. Moreover, victims who had previously remained silent seemed to be preparing a class action lawsuit. With an increasing number of condemnation against the Crook Hotel online, it was no wonder she sounded terrified. Did you read the article I took care of? It was well written, don't you think? I decided to inform her of the reality.
What do you mean?
She asked back in a weak, breathless voice. I should have mentioned earlier, I work for the publishing house of the weekly magazine.
What?
You asked me to do something about it, so I did. That phone call you made added depth to our article.
What have you done? Because of bottom feeders like you, I am...
She retaliated frantically. Seemed she still had some energy. Oh, and I'm recording this call too. Shall we make another article? Think carefully before you speak. After a pause, I heard her sniffling and snorting over the phone.
I get it. Please, retract the article. I can't even go outside now because of it. My friends are cutting ties with me.
Maybe they were never really your friends. Well, you lack consideration for others. So this is an opportunity to learn empathy. If only she had been more considerate, this could have been avoided. Despite my repeated explanations that an article once published cannot be retracted, she kept begging.
Please, I'm sorry. Do something about this article.
Apologists won't retract the article, nor will they change the fact that our anniversary was ruined. Have you received a lawsuit from the victims? A trial is coming, right? Time to reflect. Goodbye. I was tired of dealing with her crying, so I cut the call short. My part in this was over. My husband and daughter, having witnessed everything, were pleased.
The article helped others too. That's good.
A family win. Months later, as I had predicted, the hotel truly collapsed. The lawsuit was a landslide victory for the victims, an expected outcome. Articles exposed the manager's past escapades and the wealthy young manager and his wife, the assistant manager, divorced. With their faces known widely, the real trials were just beginning. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes, but I wouldn't make such foolish mistakes. A year later, my daughter said, "Having that as our anniversary memory is just too sad." She planned another trip to celebrate our anniversary, choosing an even more luxurious hotel than before. She had been saving up little by little, a delightful surprise. By the way, that inferior hotel, the assistant manager scoffed at next door. I visited it later for a feature. When I visited for an interview later, I discovered a surprising fact. An old building, but with well-maintained gardens blending into the scenery, evoking nostalgia. Exceptional attention to guests and delicious food. And the manager, a stunning beauty. Our photographer was more focused on her than the scenery. Stunning views, delicious food, and a gorgeous manager. A hotel overflowing with hospitality. That was the headline of our feature. The hotel, having absorbed the VIP clientele of the new defunct hotel, was now a popular destination. My husband and I finally have free time. Our daughter got married and now we're planning a trip with her family too. Life is a journey. No matter what happens, I'll keep standing up, resiliently traveling through this life. So, where to next?